Hi, everyone. It's Elizabeth Wood, and here we're at New Earth Conversations. I have my dear friend, really special man, beautiful soul and heart. He comes from a deep background of mysticism, shamanism, and practice. And you know what? He's going through the most precious event as this collective empath, and he has the most wonderful stories to share with us. His name is Vito. Thank you so much for joining me, Vito. I'm so glad to talk to you today.
It's an honor. I'm happy to be here.
Good, I'm so glad. So let's jump in because right before we started our recording, we were laying out where we're at. This is being recorded on what we might call like rioting weekend.
Yep.
It's the beginning of June. This is coming out right before solstice. We've got this little window of time where massive change is happening. We've got this energy coming up from the earth. It's affected the feminine, it's affected the masculine, the manifesting of great physical 3D level change is happening with the opening of the masculine heart. And now it's come up to the voice. We have this energetic around not being able to breathe. We have
Yep.
the non-voice, the crushing of the voice, the scream of the people wanting to be heard, the bright light of enlightenment shining on all of the corners of shame and agony and humanity seeing themselves as a whole. And we're not quite happy with what we're seeing right now. And we want change. We want change. And so, my dear friend, what would you like to share about what you're perceiving right now, and how has this led up for you right now in this peak moment? What has that been looking like to you?
Oh man. I don't leading up for probably 9 years. I feel like Occupy Wall Street was really like the beginning of this energy, at least from my perspective of it, and seeing this slow rolling tide coming up through the 2016 election, where there was a lot of obvious pushback, that which is why we have um, uh, very active, um, lower perverted or juvenile masculine, high in power, rather than there being any kind of balance. So it's became a push-pull thing for the last 3 or 4 years, with all of these different narratives creeping in. And you know um, I think one of the things we're programmed for as humans is to accept narrative, in the place of being able to process fear or anger. So while we're experiencing all of this confusion and fear and pushback, they're just everyone's really trying to feed each other a narrative to create um, uh, bristling and conflict energy, which is, we can get into that. And we're programmed for that. We've been programmed for that from religion and all the other things, going back thousands and thousands of years. And so, as someone who looks in on the collective and tries to maneuver safely within it, so that I can both look at it, but also, stay kind of separate from all of the different things. This was just a matter. It's a matter of time that these narratives started colliding. There's only so much space, and I think we're running out of space for those narratives to be maintained. And there's so much visual intake energy that at some point the evidence and trust in reality, I think that is part of what's coming up from the mother, from Earth, to be like, okay, the sky is blue, the ground is stable, the Earth is round, the ability to just have a shared experience of what's going on is so difficult right now because it makes a lot of these narratives really uncomfortable. And for most people, anything that is uncomfortable is a shutdown. And we're not gonna, that's not gonna function right now. We're gonna have a lot of breaking through of that is necessary. And I think what we're seeing both with health crisis issues and society crisis issues is that the experience of this country and this society is really diverse depending on who you were born as and how you move through the world, whether if it's through trying to process and being authentic, or whether it's fear-based, or whether it's comfort-based, or whether it's anger-based. All of these things that are non-authentic, that generate these narratives that we stick with and that we cling to for safety, those are going to have to be addressed because everyone's about to get real uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's ramping up big time, and you and I were both saying that we could feel this wave of power, and I think it's definitely from Earth herself and the presence of the Divine Mother energetic, whose love is so pure and so powerful that just the presence of it is all that's needed to spark a simultaneous collapsing of anything that doesn't fit in true unconditional love, and also an ascending of consciousness, and as it moves past the throat, coming up into true consciousness, the lid being blown off of having sides, which is the weird perverted version of duality. It's the weird separation version of what duality is. Duality, it can be synergy. It can work in tandem for growth.
Absolutely.
And yet this concept of sides and division, that's not where growth happens. And there's this full circle, radical full circle of people from all walks and all mindsets saying, enough. Where is the value in each person's voice? And that's happening at the moment,
right?
Around the voice and the value of the individual's voice. And then I think we'll come into a recognition of facets of what we might say Indra's net, everybody being part of it and equal on a level of equanimity that we haven't ever seen on this planet, except at the beginning when we had egalitarianism.
Yep. Tribes. I mean, we had it in tribes, going after that, but any large societal construct flushed that out, I think, after Egypt, I think was the last 2,000 years or 4,000 years ago. Matriarchal was there. Hatshepsut, I think.
Yeah, the matrilineal, just from an anthropological point of view, because that's my area, like the matrilineal being present, there was a lot more egalitarianism. And then the corruption of it was actually the economic shift into profit.
Right.
And then, bam, you have patriarchy. And profit was actually not the catalyst of it. That was just one of the outcomes of it.
Right. It's one of the tools.
Yeah, exactly. And even then, like, patriarchy might not even be the right word, really, because it wasn't just all men in power. It was a select few. It was the corrupted priesthood.
Yep.
And that corrupted priesthood, we're shining a light on this. The dark feminine and the dark masculine are getting lit up.
Yeah.
It's getting really revealed very clearly. And on all of the sides, there's all this clarity that there's all the built up falsities and the missing chunks of information, and this really weird wonky seesaw level feeling of, whoa, am I going to collapse? And
Right.
people end up asking how they play into it. Am I going to collapse or am I going to ascend or what the heck is going to happen?
Yeah.
And it's all tossed up in chaos at the moment, but that's entropy. That's the law of entropy. Entropy is creative. It's generative. What do you feel about that, Vito?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I see entropy as a really important part of the entropy refinement cycle. So as you know, I I kind of I the divine masculine in me loves watching and protecting the entropy. Like, okay, instead of I'm not going to fight this, this is happening. I'm going to listen to all of the voices and celebrate the differences first, and then allow it space to refine the entropic energy and rebuild itself. And I think that's what I think there's enough of that going on right now in men and women, holding space for that individuated chaos to bubble and have its chemical reaction on the planet. I think there's enough of us holding space for it that the refinement can take place even in the face of chaotic resistance, which we're definitely feeling through individual agents who are infiltrated by resistance energy and comfort and anger and fear, who are scrambling. I want to protect them too. I want them to have that experience of not being tethered so that they can refine and come out of it in whatever way that they're going to. And if I need to crumble and be nothing again, I can do that. I've done that out a few times. But I really want to hold space for everybody's process, because um, after this great chaotic moment, we can actually meet on an authentic level without these narratives that are so separating. And any little bit of harmony creates synergy and growth and just a wonderful vibration that gets it's contagious. But we kind of got to get to the bottom. So I what was it? I was looking at the country the other day and thinking of myself having been an addict, and alcoholic. Like, okay, where's the country's bottom? Like, are we going to keep rolling now, or are we gonna stop? Is this good enough, or are we going to find ourselves in a ditch later? Like, so I think we need to check our hangover and see if what we're doing is, if we're going to go further, I'm going to hold space for that too. Like, okay, we going to go down more. Let's do it. I'm ready. And I think the willingness to just plow and tumble forward, bloody and bruised, is kind of how we're going to get through this.
Yeah, that's what humans are made of, man. Every time we hit some rock bottom, which we have before, we have a word for it. We call it revolution.
Right. Yeah. Like,
And
okay,
revolutions, yeah, they don't happen that often.
you got to get really uncomfortable for that. Like,
Yeah, they do. Oh boy. And I encourage anyone to actually go look at true revolutions. We have a few.
yeah,
And there was one in Egypt, there was one in Roman times, there was one in Russia, there was one in France, in Europe, and we had one already here. And true revolutions, and then in China as well. And so true revolutions, they do these 180s. It's a big 180. In this case, I see it even going farther than that.
yeah,
And it's going to be the remaking of everything without, like, say, for example, throwing out all the technology, because we can't do that. And there'll be a refining of technology. There's
yeah,
going to be individual choices where someone's going to finally say, okay, here's my framework. I want technology that's healthy for my mind, my heart, my body, and my spirit. And with that personal choice comes the empowerment paradigm. The empowerment paradigm where the person says, oh, I am a creator being.
yeah,
I have been taking part of this society, whether I'm at home stuck looking at a screen all day or not.
Yeah.
And that empowerment paradigm is what will come out of it, and it's gonna loop all the way back around to 360, and it's gonna be a whole other playing field, a different energetic from the earth. The body, the physical form of the human is changing.
Right.
It's no longer bearable for us to live the lifestyles we've been living. And there's not one economic system or social system or political system that will go untouched.
Yeah.
All of them are going to change, and fast, like super
Yeah.
fast, because it's
It'll be fast.
survival level now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it has to. We're about to go over the edge.
Yeah, exactly. So knowing that there's surrender, there's what you're saying. I can dissolve. I can in my choice whatever's there, and that's the rock bottoms I've been experiencing too. The ego death, the end of my concern about all the tight schedules and tight constraints around time and tight constraints around creativity. It's all consciousness under pressure. And
Yeah.
this pressure has become so great that it's become its own entropy.
Right.
And in us, we're finding ourselves resisting it. If we resist it, it creates illness. So, quick example: the past several months, I have broke out head to toe in full blown, holy cow, type 4 level outbreaks of hives,
Wow.
like a bunch, and to the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to get an EpiPen
Right.
because I have no idea why exactly, no clue why I'll keep breaking out like this. But you know what? It's resistance. It's
Yeah.
resistance at its core. Tell me a little bit about resistance and how people can notice it, how they can work with that and move out of resistance into surrender, into the non-judgmental openness you're talking about.
Um, uh, One of the things that I focus on, and I wrote in my first book and my second book, is this sense of processing emotion. Because generally, as a child, I always expected that adults were always processing and thinking about things. They were just really good at it, was what it looked like to me, and it wasn't something we really talked about in school or growing up or anything. And so when I got to be an adult, I got really pissed off because I was still having real issues with anger and fear, and it was really jagged and unsettling, and I couldn't make it work. And so then I kind of started realizing that nobody processes anything. So we're all living, especially now with mild cases at least of PTSD, because we're trying to, the emotions are hurting, we're in pain. And so whatever expectation we have about what adulthood is and what being a grown human being means, in general, those are all false. And unprogramming that is like step one of like a 20-step process. But in process, so when I was battling alcohol and bipolar disorder and PTSD in my 20s, which really wasn't that long ago. I mean, we're talking 12, 15 years. I had to realize I had to stop and I had to deal with each emotion as it came up, or literally I'd start drinking. So I would try to measure sober hours, and during those sober hours of the day, I'd start with 3 and then 5 and then 8. The thing that got me was emotion. So each time an uncomfortable emotion came up, I was like, okay, we're grabbing you. Okay, now we're just gonna sit here and be uncomfortable with you. Okay. And I'm sitting there shaking, I'm like, okay, this is really uncomfortable. You're just going to outlast it. So the idea of outlasting discomfort rather than resisting it is really a huge step. So first of all, almost all emotion comes with a physical component. And some of us are shut down to that, which is just part of the programming. And some of it's physical from toxins and food and stuff like that, but most of that is just a mental block. And I use a 5-body system. There's mental, emotional, mind, heart, physical body, and then there's energy and spirit, which is different. Spirit is like a shape of energy and types and individual personalities within me that are rolling, and spirit is just fuel. So if we have a mental block, then we're creating blockages in all the other areas, and illness comes from that. So like the resistance, the blockage, not being able to feel, not being able to use the body to source intelligence and understand what's going on. Like I feel tension here this week. This is where I'm feeling tension in my jaw and in my throat. So I know that's fifth chakra needing to speak, needing to breathe and be nourished and eat food. So like, okay, I'm having issues. I'm just going to eat more food this week. I'm just going to plow and nourish myself and speak up when I need to. And I know that the collective needs to scream. I can't really scream without damaging my vocal cords because I was a singer and blah, 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 blah. But like, so I'm just going to focus on breathing, conscious breathing. And I'm going to focus on eating and chewing and nourishing the body like that. And so when we're talking about resistance, we're talking about a framework that is built into our genetic programming and our social constructs, and basically anything we're surrounding ourselves as human beings is a part of this resistance to feeling. And that sounds very simplistic, but there's so much information and wisdom that comes through feeling, that in order to dumb down society, we built in resistance for that, so that we wouldn't have this intelligence to draw on when we needed to question the structures we were birthed into. So the first step of processing emotion is recognize the emotion. The second one is don't leave it. You got to surrender. You got to sit there and actually feel it. And like, so that next step is what we all skip. Oh, I'm having this emotion, so now I'm going to start thinking about this other stuff. That is mind grabbing, distraction. And well, squirrel. Like the first step, once we realize we're having an emotion, is to mentally bypass it and start thinking about it and justifying it. So the first step is unwinding that justification and just freeze. Just going to sit here with this feeling. I'm like, oh, that's really uncomfortable. That hurts my, oh, now I can feel like there's a belt around my chest. Oh man, that's a panic attack, isn't it? Oh. So like you can feel all of these things on your body being done to you by energy, and starting to have a harmonic relationship with our own emotions and programming is really the first way to get out of a resistant state. And I was young. I think I was having a talk with my brother about a relationship I had when I was like 17 or 18. And I found myself getting furious. He was activating my cognitive dissonance about everything that was going on in my age and, you know, all these different things. And he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he divine masculine and was like, okay, I can see that you're having a reaction. Do you feel like you need to run out of the house right now? And I'm like standing there with my fists balled at my sides, like, yes. He's like, okay, we're just having a conversation. Like, we're just having a talk here, bro. Like, it's all good. Like, what are you experiencing in your body? That's what am I saying that's making this reaction? So this is why the divine masculine in all of us, male, female, everyone needs to be holding space for this gridded energy to come through. So we're okay. We're going to let it rise. We're going to let it come. Okay. We're going to let it come up to our eyes. We're going to let it come to our head. Okay. It's a little nerve-wracking. It feels like it's drowning us, but it's not. It's just moving up. Okay. We didn't die. It didn't kill us. So we're in that like feeling of panic where the rising is coming above where we breathe. And that's earth energy coming up to be like, fill us and create a relationship with us again, where we can feel all of the different parts of our body and have some mental alignment with that, because most of the resistance comes from the programming in this bad boy. And so we have to really lose mind dominance and allow feeling dominance and mind as servant, not mind as master. And that is that's a tough maneuver, because this, as master, is super safe. We don't have to be on. We can. I remember psychiatrists. I think when I had a string of psychiatrists who weren't really listening to me, which I can't fault them. I don't know the teaching, but they didn't. They obviously weren't being taught psychology the way that I was taught by my mother, who was a professor and a licensed therapist. She taught me, to listen and assume everything is accurate that they're saying first, so you can empathize and understand. The, so they're like, okay, so you're having this feeling and you come out of it. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm trapped in it. I can't ever get out. And they could never sense that. So they couldn't understand what being trapped was, because their mind didn't allow for them to empathize into that. They could imagine a panic attack, but they couldn't imagine not being able to stop it with their mind. So, and that's what traps us. That's where the trapped is for those of us who have PTSD reactions and panic attacks to things, is because we can't stop it with our minds. Our minds are not strong enough to stop or this physical response. So we have to start respecting our body on a whole different level and everything it feels. Because if we try to master it down, it does nothing. In fact, it makes it worse.
Yeah.
So understanding the mental aspect of the resistance to this rising feeling, whatever it is, rage, anguish, grief, understanding that the first thing we need to do is shut our mind off and stop giving it dominance and start resting and protecting the experience of the feeling. Protect the experience of the feeling as part of the masculine mental shift from fighting and toddlering and no, I don't want that, to okay, I'm uncomfortable, but I want to hold space for this. And it is uncomfortable. And I love that I'm experiencing such discomfort today that I'm literally shaking because of how uncomfortable it is, so everybody can see, like, this is my profession and I'm having a hard time with it. Like, it's never easy.
Let's speak to the people who are feeling the way you're feeling. When you first got on, I said, are you a collective empath? And that's kind of a term that kind of came up over the years, that there were empaths who could feel things within vicinity, but then there's this other kind of empath who can feel the whole collective. And when we're talking about collapse, we're talking about the globe. We're not just talking as Americans. We're talking about the whole globe. It's planetary. There's no one untouched by this. And both of us probably, I know, have clients all over the place, and they're all saying the same.
Yeah, it's that.
So with that, let's speak to the collective empaths right now, because their fields are so big. Your field is so big, and I can feel it.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of us have been hesitant to break out all of our tools. Because for me personally, whenever I get really big, I get resistance energy back at me, which I've been cataloging long enough to know that it's real and actually happening,
Right.
rather than just my imagination. Like, oh, like no, when I get big, I get pushed on, things get heavier and more difficult. So most of us have trained as society is chugging along evenly to stay just a little bit below the surface, so that we don't get our head lopped off. And and there's a lot of genetic memory there, a lot of past life stuff of being witches and getting burned.
Literally, yeah.
Literally, yeah. This isn't the first time that we've had the experience of being removed forcibly from society. A lot of us have that, and we have that memory within us, and we have memories of plagues and other things that all run through us. So having all of that active makes it so there's no staying out of the spotlight right now. So the amount of resistance is now global. So it's less specific to us right now. And so for me, the people and many that I work with, I'm like, okay, we're just going to break all the stuff out now. We're getting all the tools. So if you're worried, if you've been worried about, your fire burning things with people, and yeah, no, we're just going to light everything up now. We're going to bring all the tools forward, and we're just going to burn things if you're a fire person. For me, I'm mostly water, and that's just, that's me. I'm
I am
very,
too, obviously. Blue, blue, blue.
yeah, and I'm a double Pisces on top of it.
Ooh,
So
wow.
I come and I bring a lot of solar energy. So the idea that you have sun and water, like, okay, do we need to drown the sun today? Or do we need to burn the water? Which one of these tools am I going to unleash? Okay, am I going to be a dragon today? Because I can definitely do that, and I can burn this whole place down. So the idea of using everything in what we would normally keep kind of hidden and at our side is really potent and powerful, because as the structures, not as my son calls them, the non-consensual hierarchies start to break down, we start looking for what actual power is rather than what assumed power is. What do we use to fuel us to keep going? What do we value as the systems that dictate value are crumbling? And so for all of the collective empaths who are watching this, shit show, basically, of like Angry Birds when things start falling, like, okay, the thing is, oh, this falls and then that falls. Yes, I just used Angry Birds as the.
It's all good. I have kids too.
It was perfect. It was the perfect thing that just popped into my head. So as we're watching these things fall, the worry about what are we going to hold on to and grasp here as we go down, and that's that inner power stuff. Like, I believe in the value of human beings, and I believe that processing emotion is important. I believe that recognizing differences and celebrating them so that we can create harmony and synergy, I believe that that's one of the most important things in the world. And my belief in that is stronger than, not my belief, because that makes it sound different. My connection to that truth within me is larger than any programmed structure inside my head. And I know that within all of the collective empaths, we all have that. We all have something within us that we trust, whether it's unconditional love, whether it's individuality, whether it's connection and synergy, no matter what it is, we have something in there that is stronger than any of the programs we've been dealt. And that's what's going to be there for us as we move through it. And that's what's going to be there for us to share with everybody after, as things get, as things change more and more. Whether they get worse or crazier, I'm not sure about. Feels like we have a few more things to get through. Mm-hmm. And we definitely have a couple more levels to sink. And I gotta say, it does. I was in the clearing last night too. I saw water filling up, like past my, like, oh, okay. Like, and I have a fear of drowning.
Me too.
Yeah. And I've almost drowned 4 times on top of it. So yeah. So I can, like, it's really difficult to remain calm as my eyes are going under, but underneath in the murky darkness, there's stillness. And there's some odd truth that's waiting there, and I can feel it. So I'm excited, and I'm nervous and anxious, and I think trusting the physical sensation we're having, along with the values that are integral to our spirit coming into the mind, saying, okay, no, we love human beings, we love animals, we love the world. That's more valuable than any system, and we're just going to hold that as everything else, does its Angry Bird thing.
I love this, and I want to validate it too from what I'm seeing, because I get the pleasure and privilege to serve many, many people. And over the past year, as all this has been ramping up in these big, massive tsunami level waves of consciousness, from at one point last year, around the same time as right now, I was doing work trying to help people perceive their essence, sort of the very first level of frequency their soul took on in individuation from source. And it took me, for example, about a whole week last year at a live in-person retreat to perceive this stuff. And now I can see it within minutes.
Yeah.
And it's not me, has nothing to do with my skills getting better. It's the energy, it's the revealing that's occurring. I've always stayed away from the word activation.
Yeah.
Activation always felt like a shortcut to me, and like, bing, now you're activated.
Right.
But I'm gonna say that word in more of an electrical engineer sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Things are getting activated in that there is that deepest level operating system, hardware level truth of each person's true frequency that's getting revealed. And it's kind of like, okay, as that gets revealed, what happens? All the biggest blocks show up. All the baggage has light shown all over it. It's like burning the candle at both ends when you're purposefully processing in the moment, and also simultaneously, it's like your soul is processing on the other end.
Yeah.
And it's pushing it all forth so that it can be revealed. And you're not going to fear the trash bag if you get to know it. If you go into the trash bag, most of it's not even ours. It's written in the DNA. It's lineage, epigenetic memory.
Yeah.
You go into the trash bag, for example, plague and famine and siege warfare, bam. There's all the thousands of years of that come up to the surface to be processed, and everyone's like, why do I feel this bad? What is going on? And now, why am I so afraid of being hungry? I'm going to go to Costco and I'm going to not only buy all the toilet paper, but all the food.
Right.
And yet that still doesn't feel good enough. It doesn't fix the problem, because the problem had nothing to do with the food or the toilet paper at the moment. It was such a deeper, much more physically set of issues. But once that's there, once someone is at least aware that their soul is pushing forward through the murkiness, and that's that level of awakening, that ascending awakening happening, the opening up of the mind to say, wow, I can't keep living like a floating head anymore.
Right.
This isn't going to work, because all we do is bang up against each other and create more baggage.
Yep.
I have to live a different way. And then what I hear you saying is, let that stillness reveal. Let the stillness that's deep under that water, deep under the sinking of the human experience, to hit the bottom, to push off, and to see this light that's not yours alone, but it's part of you, to see yourself glow. We're all bioluminescent.
Right.
Literally and figuratively, esoterically and physically.
Yeah.
And that bioluminescence is natural. It comes from that deep light, and that light is the source field. It is you, and that's where we'll rebuild from. And it's coming, and it's going to be hard for a while, because we're not only having to sift through all the wreckage, even just now as it still continues to crumble, we're sifting through the wreckage. And we're creative, we're powerful. We're saying, whoa, what am I going to keep from this? I'm not just going to burn the house entirely down, though some of them need to. Some of them, I'm going to take some of the beams and the nails and the pieces of it, and we're going to build something new. But what we got to figure out, and I can't do it alone. You can't put a barn up by yourself.
No.
It's impossible. So it's kind of this collaborative, also lots of souls saying, hey, I know you might be physically alone and isolated, but you're not alone in your feelings. You're not alone in your presence of mind. You're not alone in what you're experiencing, and reaching out, recreating the net. So this is this sort of vision that's come through as you were talking. And I just wanted to also validate what you were saying. So from there, that stillness is where we'll create from here what a lot of people call New Earth, and it's upon us. It's now. It's not tomorrow. It's now.
It's now. Yeah, it's happening.
And what else comes to mind to help people? What are some of the basics that you like? So you mentioned mindful breathing, staying and hanging out with the emotion, letting it exist, because it does. It's part of the universe, just like
it's not out there. It's not pushing. It's your arm. It's your own arm you're pushing.
It's real. No. What else can people do that's in the now that can make sense to them to keep allowing themselves to be activated, really?
Right. That's a really good question. I think of all the people I work with and with everyone, I think there's such a differing layer of what that first thing is. For me, there's sinking into my vulnerability, and I'm a shaman, but like I have PTSD. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm all of these things before I'm a producer for society. So grounding myself in that, and we just started a garden. So like this also first, like we wanted to garden for 8 years, but we did it now. And so understanding that there's a direct connection, like I go out and I feed my plants, like I'm dropping water on you consciously. I want you to use this water to grow. So how do I do that with myself throughout the day? What types of behaviors are nourishing to my soul? What help me ground? And then like sometimes there isn't anything that everyone can do. Sometimes it's just outlasting discomfort, because all discomfort is temporary. Like there's another side. I mean, let me preface that those that have chronic illnesses and chronic pain, I'm not saying that ends. That's not the same thing. I'm talking about when we have internal resistance to emotional discomfort, things that we would rather not be feeling, cognitive dissonance, all of these things, as they rise, just the understanding that we're going to outlast them, and that there are ways of nourishing ourselves in between whatever bouts we're having with them. So I know where my battles are going to be throughout the day. I know where I get cranky. I know at this point, I know exactly how much news I can handle. Okay, I got about 2 more minutes left in me. And I know if I can handle getting into a conversation online with someone with an opposing view or not. And I can really tell now my discernment has gotten so much better. And I know what arguments to have and which ones not to, which are going to be who is seeking harmony and who is seeking understanding and who is just parroting. And I also notice the voices in my head that are parroting. So it's like juggling knives, and all of us have different knives. So really discerning what we need to do and minimizing the amount of pressure on ourselves throughout the day, minimizing the amount of unnecessary production that we're leaning into. Whether you want to sleep all day, fine. Want to do this, fine. Just focus on the self-nourishing, because up until this point in history for the last 4,000, 5,000 years, it's what we do and what we produce for society as a identification of value. And that's got to end, because world, look at this shit. So how do I each day spend my time building up that which has value outside of society's programmed perception of it? And how do I reinforce that mentally and physically? Like, I know that I need to exercise. I know that I need to do specific things for my body and to eat. For me, I have like a super high meat diet because I need to bring my vibration down. That's, the structure says high vibration is good. Like that's a lot of the previous structure of understanding the New Age movement is high vibration is good. I can do high vibration, but I'm trying to pull myself back down to the planet every day. So like, that's how I do it. And understanding that that's how my body functions and learning that about myself really saved my life. If I hadn't known the things that I needed to do to stay embodied and feeling as much as I can. So I'd say focusing on nourishment and embodiment for your body, specifically yours, and not looking for outside validation necessarily when you find things that work for you, because oftentimes the structures that we have been trained to go to were built by people into non-consensual hierarchy. So the day of the guru should be gone now.
Yeah.
So that's where I am, is this individuated, nourishing, self-contained recognition of value.
And then from there, we can all meet from heart space to create
Right.
all the new paradigm of empowerment. That's so beautiful. I really love that. And I relate because the trying to be a psychic and be in your body is like an oxymoron. It's like,
It's almost incompatible. Yeah.
basically. And I realized that, especially the past year, and having struggled with addiction like you too, and mainly in order to make the energy just stop, because there's so much power that wants to come through, and and I can't shut my third eye. So what could I do? I could make it really drunk, and then I
Yeah.
wouldn't feel so much, and then I can just kind of hang out and still see what I see, but not have a PTSD level reaction to it 24/7.
Yeah, it took me a long time to build up that muscle to be able to sit
Yeah.
with it for a day. Yeah.
Oh, I know. And just 24 hours can be a miracle for people who are struggling with that embodiment level part. But to have others say, hey, you're not alone. Good job. You did it for a day. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Let's see if you can add a couple hours to it. Not another day, a couple
Yeah.
hours.
A couple hours. Yeah.
Yeah. And the nourishing, oh my goodness. Talk about food. This whole paradigm shift around food. As an anthropologist, I always tell people, look, you can look at a society and only look at how people get their food, and you can pretty much from there guess with great accuracy exactly how that society functions and how healthy it really is.
Yeah.
And I'm privileged and blessed to live on land and have a holy cow level garden where I really don't have to go to the store to get food if I don't need to,
Right.
or if I don't want to. What a privilege. And to nourish myself from the same property I'm living on and barefoot on and getting my fingers in
Right.
to that dirt and the earth and the trees and my body has changed so much, and being more comfortable being in my body and being more comfortable with my own power center, as well as a woman, it being the root, as the masculine, it being the heart, and then finding balance in the power centers in the heart and the root within whatever embodiment you're in. Finding balance from all the past lives. I mean, no wonder people are confused, Vito. My goodness, they're so confused. They are having trouble with the knives, and they're all different.
Yeah.
And and you drop one and you end up stabbing yourself in the foot, and then you feel guilty and you're mean to yourself, and what a wreck. But here we go. Here we're being asked to take all those knives and lay them down and assess them and get real about discernment, discerning for yourself, not for an entire state or nation or county or community or even a household.
Right.
For you, what is the truth for you? Because that facet of reality is vital to the whole. You can't have a perfect looking crystal without each facet. If you somehow make those, missing, then it's cracked. It can't work. It doesn't have the same light as it would with each facet being valuable. And I see that in you, wanting to draw it out of people, wanting to draw their facet out, wanting to draw that light out and get back in your body, the preciousness of the body. It's so precious, it's so rare, it's such an opportunity. And you and I know how it feels to want to die. We've been there. We've been on the edge of death many, many times, either by our own hand or water's hands or somebody's hands. Or for me, like the bottle. That edge, it's there, and we're there. We're at the edge, and we're finding our way to the bottom. We've got to hit rock bottom ultimately in order to push back up. But that's the beauty of it, is that people like you out there, they're giving people a chance to just be where they're at.
Yeah.
Without judgment, without saying, well, why can't you snap out of it?
Right.
Yeah, right. We're talking about, 500,000 years of trauma and oppression and subjugation of all humankind. No, you don't just snap out of it.
Right. You don't snap out of it.
We've got we're kind of like the cleanup. We're the transition team, like my friend likes to say. We're the transition team. And what does the transition team do? First, we assess who's got what strengths, who's got which abilities, and no one has no abilities.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you can't feed yourself. I always tell people, you want to know what pure light looks like? Go hang out with the severely physically disabled. Go hang out with people like that, because they're in such surrender, because they literally can't even feed themselves. They're
Right.
dependent, and yet they're some of the most pure levels of joy I've ever been around.
Yeah.
And they burn through you with their beauty and that light, and they make you see very clearly where all of your ego is. And
Yep.
I had the joy of being around that at an early age. But to know that that's true, that even their presence, they don't have to speak. That's so much power and value there. They're just going to light the whole show up with their presence. And that in of itself, that's a great example. No one has no ability for this light. What's one last big, well, whatever comes up, what's one last thing you'd like to share, Vito, from your beautiful heart and your space that you've been making to, and being such a friend to humankind?
I think what I say on Facebook often to a lot of my friends is just, okay, we're going through this bump, whatever I'm picking up that day. Like Schumann resonance has been really, a thing lately where it's highly effective, but now we have so many different possibly agitating elements. I think each day we're recognizing what's going on for us that day, what's going on in the world that day, what's going on for our friends that day, and just putting your hands in. Like I just say hands in, and people will come to the post and just type hands in, and everyone's like, okay, we're all there for a minute. We're all sharing this, this small space of consciousness where we're holding on to just whatever we need to get through that day. And we do outlast everything, and we will outlast it. But man, when we're going through it, we need to not feel alone. And so, I've always been a big proponent of no gurus, no leaders, no, when it comes to this spiritual energy that we're trying to nurture our emotional and mental body through a crumbling like society with, understanding that the strength in our spirit and the strength in our body and the strength in the fuel that our heart pumps, understanding, having faith in that we can all kind of share that. And as our mind and our emotions are going all these different directions, we got a little bit of base consciousness that we can always hug each other with to get through a day. And I think that's that's really it, that that deeply grounded presence within us that moves beneath all of the other things that's just going to keep going, and connecting that to everybody else's, because we're all having, that's where we end up meeting, and that's where things get built, and that's where, you know, so much of this is activity based. Like I have to cook myself food, there's things throughout the day that I have to do. So what presence am I bringing to all of those, and who am I bringing with me? And so I've refined my friends list very carefully, and I definitely, I'm so focused with my attention and conscious with what my mind is working on, that I can allow myself to rest when it's time to rest, and I can feed myself what I need to, whether it's food or whether it's ideas, what I need to, and I can just keep kind of slowly mowing through this wasteland. I'm just going to say wasteland. And so the thing I would like to say most at the end of this is that this is a recovery for all of us. This is a social recovery. Yeah, I see a lot of people talking about like, I don't want to say it like that. I see myself looking at adulthood when I was coming into it as a recovery from false expectations. And I see this as a social recovery from the expectations that we're doing it right, that we have been doing it right for thousands of years, and this is just how we're going to do it. No, this is wrong. It's killing us. And we're going to have to make the changes, and we're going to have to be the ones who put in the effort to do that. And we're going to have to be uncomfortable. All the things that we were taught about society are basically up for assessment as far as whether they're true or not, and a lot of them are not. So understanding that it's a recovery and that we're inpatient right now.
Yeah.
We're not getting to outpatient yet. Understanding we're just getting our bearings inpatient, because we're hitting the first levels of societal sobriety right now. And so I think if we understand that we're impatient right now, and that we're having a really difficult turnover process, and that there's a lot of people involved, I think it'll help. I think it'll help with the feeling of loneliness and the feelings of helplessness and feelings of powerlessness that are all appropriate, because our society has become unmanageable. So step one, you have a problem that your life is unmanageable, and here we are. So we're on step one.
Perfect analogy. I'm so with you. And thank you for being the one in your sphere to hold this space, to hold the hands in, and to be there, and to let your big beautiful heart shine out to the humans out there who needed to hear this. You're not alone. We've got hands in with you, and we've got your back. We've got your back as we recover our dignity, as we recover our freedom and justice, as we recover our voice and our breath, and as we recover the way that we are meant to live, which is still yet to be fully revealed as how that will look for modern global humankind, and even on the galactic stage as well. And thank you so much, my friend, for spending time with me today and sharing your heart. You're amazing.
Thank you.